This is a quick tutorial showing you how to get up and started completing the exercises in our lab manual. If you're at home, first thing you'll need to do is go to the R website and download and install R. Then go to the RStudio website and download and install RStudio on your computer. These programs are already installed on the lab computers. All right, let's take a look at Lab 1. We'll scroll down. First thing we're going to do is download the lab templates. There is a zip file here. I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to download this file somewhere where I can find it. Let's say my desktop. Save it. Then we need to unzip the file. So let's go to my desktop. Here it is. There's the file. On a Mac, you would just double click this. Here we go. Oops. Double click. And it's going to unzip the file, make a new folder. Let's take a look at the folder. All right, there's 3 things in it. If you're on Windows, you might see more than 3 things, but here's the 3 important things. A data folder. This will contain the data files we use in the lab. A lab templates folder. You'll be copying these to complete the labs. And R Markdown's lab.rproj file. And if you have R and RStudio installed, what we can do now is simply double click this file with the cube on it, and it's going to open up a brand new RStudio session. Okay, so over here on the right hand side we can see our files. We're inside our new folder we made. We've got the data files, the lab templates, and over here we've got the console, so we can actually enter commands into the console. For example, just like a calculator, 1 + 1, press return, and that equals 2. To get started doing Lab 1, let's copy a lab template. So I'm going to open up the lab templates folder. I'm going to select Lab 1 and go up to More here and copy. So I'm going to make a copy of this and put my name on it. And let's say Lab 1 graphic mat. Okay. And I put that file right here. What we want to do is move it. So I want to move this into my main folder. Now if we go back to the main folder, R Markdown's lab, we should see our new lab template. So let's click on it. Here it is. You can see there's some things you can change for the title. Let's put your own name in there. I'll put my own name here. And let's drag this down. All right, let's take a look at this R Markdown document. We just changed some names here. All of these things between the 3 dashes and this other stuff, for now, we're not going to worry about that. You'll be just changing your name and leaving everything else as is. You'll notice that we're looking at a text file. This is the template. There's not much to it. What we're going to be doing is deleting parts of it. For example, here, where it says Lab 1 Lab Manual Exercise. In this space, we're going to be writing things, adding our code, and using this as a spot to keep your work. In these other 2 places, we're going to is more room for you to do some things. We have some exercises for you to try some stuff out on your own, and then we have some written answers for you or some questions for you to answer in writing. Okay, so how would we get started with Lab 1? Well, If we were to scroll down, you can see that there's a bunch of sections telling you different things you can do with our code. For example, if we run this line of code, we're going to create this histogram. So let's try that out. I'm just going to copy this. Whoops. There we go. Copy. And I'm going to put that into, first of all, the console. I just clicked on the bottom here. I'm going to type that in, or copy and paste it into the console and press enter. And what you can see is we've created that a histogram over here, and it's showing us the histogram in the plot window. All right. Now, let's say we're making some notes and we wanted to tell ourselves that we're making a histogram, and here's the code to do it. Now, when you put code like this into an R Markdown document, you have to put it in what's called a code block. So I'm writing a code block here. I'm showing you what it looks like. It's 3 backticks, followed by a curly brace, an R, and another curly brace. The code goes in the middle. Here it's in the middle. And then we end with 3 more backticks. These little backticks are usually on the top left-hand side of your keyboard. If you've done everything correctly, it will highlight in gray, and then you'll see a little play button here. So now you can play your code and see the results right inside your document. That's pretty neat. The other really neat thing about our Markdown documents is that you can knit them. So let's press this button and see what happens. Okay, we've actually taken this text file and made this new file over here. It's actually a website, so if you click this arrow with a browser icon, you can see your document in the web browser. And what you're seeing is the title, the headers, any notes that you make, the R code that you've written, and the output of the R code. So this is a great way for you to store everything that you're doing all in one place and have it be easily readable. Let's head back to the lab manual and scroll down. The next part is asking us to load some data in. So let's grab this little bit of code. Sort of annoying to highlight this right now. I'm going to copy it. Let's go back to R. And I'm going to make some more. So add some data. There's a shortcut for making these little code blocks. On a Mac it's Option Command I, and I think on a PC it's Control Alt I. Try that out. So I copied and pasted in these 2 lines of code. The first line is called Library Data Table, and this is going to load up a package we need to do the job of bringing in data from a data file. Now, if you've just installed R in RStudio, you can go to the Packages tab and find out if you have the library called Data Table. Probably you don't. Let's scroll down and see if I have it. It's right here, data.table. Now it's not clicked on. If I click it on, it will load into R. And that's what this line of code is doing. So if I copy this line of code and run it in the console, notice we'll click on this data table package. If you don't have the data table package, you need to install it. You do that by clicking the install button, type in data table, and that should be all you need to do. choose install from the CRAN repository, enter in the correct name of the library, check install dependencies, click it on, and then just click install. After you install it, you'll see the package here, and you can then turn it on. Okay, so in our Markdown, we're turning it on, and then we're going to run this line of code. Let's see what it does. I'm copying it into the console, pressing enter. Now it looks like it didn't do anything. However, we've loaded the data file film permits, which is located in the data folder. So if we looked at our files and clicked on data, we can see that here it is, film permits. And we've read it into a variable that we named. I just made up this name, NYC_films. Now where is this thing? Well, if you click the Environment tab, now there's a variable in there called NYC films. And if you click the little blue button, you can see it has a lot of data in it. Or if you click the variable, you can see an Excel-like spreadsheet that shows you lots of information about what's in this data file. Pretty neat. Now that we have it in a code block, if we want to redo this, we just have to press this play button and it will rerun all those things. Okay, let's go back to the lab manual and take a look at the next step. So the next step is called Summary Tools, where what we want to do is get a sense of what's in that big data frame. And here is another library that we can use to get a quick look. So let's see how that would work. I'm going to make a code block, put this thing in, and I'm just going to press play to see what happens. Alright, what has happened is we've created a little summary of this data frame. It renders as a web page. It's not that easy to see inside this viewer, although we can expand it if we want to by dragging it over and doing something like this. There's lots of different variables in this data frame, and we're getting basic information. For example, one of the columns codes the borough, and this is giving us some information about how many different film permits have been requested in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, and Staten Island. It just tells you this right here. This can be very useful for getting a quick sense of what's in a big data file. Okay. Let me show you something. If I was going to compile this document again by pressing the knit button, something a little bit strange is going to happen here. Because remember, we're making, check this out. We just got bumped into a web browser and we're seeing this summary file. But maybe we wanted to look at our file that we were making that looks like this. In general, I'd recommend that you know how to use summary tools. It can be useful to view, that's the view command, a summary of a data frame. But if you don't want to have this run, you can always set this eval property, it's the evaluation property, to false. So now let's watch what happens if we re-knit this. It's going to do everything, except it's not going to run the code in this little code block. So now when we run this whole file, it doesn't pop us out. It does show us the code we wrote, but it doesn't pop us out into our web browser. So that's pretty neat. All right, let's keep going. Where are we here? So we're learning how to make some plots. I'm going to do two quick things just to show you how we can do this code block and this code block all in one go. So the first thing I'll do is copy out this part where we're analyzing the data frame a little bit. We won't go into that just yet. And we go back and get some of the plotting functions here. Copy that in. Now remember, if you don't have the dplyr library or the ggplot2 library installed, this won't work. You need to install those packages first and before you can load them. Now that we have all the code in here, if we press the play button, it's going to load up the libraries and it's going to make a plot for us. So this is now showing us the number of film permit requests in the different boroughs. You can see that Manhattan is where the most requests have been made, followed by Brooklyn, then Queens, then the Bronx, and Staten Island. Okay, so what's been going on here is, where is this thing? We've got this pretty big data file with 50,728 observations. There's a lot going on here. What we wanted to do was go and find the column, this one, that is coding which borough every permit was requested in. And then we wanted to say, count how many times it's Staten Island, how many times is it the Bronx, how many times is it Brooklyn. And this little bit of code did that for us. We took the data frame, we grouped it by the borough column, and then we did a summary. We made we're basically asking, well, in R, we used the length function to ask the question, how many things are there in something? So here we have the borough column. We're grouping it by the names inside the borough column, and this code ultimately gives us a new little data frame called counts. If we look at that, it's a nice little summary. It shows us each of the boroughs and how many times they appear in the bigger data frame. All right. So then we're taking this new counts variable and putting it inside a plotting function called ggplot. So this part tells us where the data is, and this part tells us what to do in the plot. So for example, we're going to make the x-axis the borough column. The borough column has the names, and the y-axis is going to be the variable containing the numbers. So here, the borough column has the names of the boroughs, and the count of permits column with little underscores has the numbers, the counts. All right. Then we're telling it to make a bar graph. And when we run this piece of code, for example, in the console, we make the graph. Okay, that's it for our short introduction. Your lab instructor will take you through the rest of Lab 1. Good luck, and see you in class.